This video is brought to you by CuriosityStream. Go to curiositystream.com/polyphonic and enter the code polyphonic to get 30 days of membership for free. On August 15th, 1969, the highways into Bethel, New York were backed up for miles. Tens of thousands of cars were slouching towards Bethel to be reborn. It was the first day of the Woodstock Music and Arts Fair, an event that's known today as just Woodstock. Billed as 3 days of peace and music, Woodstock grew to become so much more than that. It was a pilgrimage for an entire movement, a statement in favor of a world that they wanted to build. It was the progenitor of the modern music festival, and a moment we're still trying to recapture today, 50 years later. And because of this, it's a story that's been told and retold 100 times. But one song in particular captures that moment like a bug in amber, though it was written by someone who couldn't attend the festival. Let's take a closer look. As musicians and fans alike flocked to Bethel in ever-growing numbers, Joni Mitchell sat anxious in a hotel room in New York City. Mitchell was one of the icons of the hippie movement. Her picturesque lyrics and crystalline voice were the personification of a certain aspect of flower power. She would have been welcomed as a queen among these crowds, but the realities of scheduling didn't line up. Mitchell was already scheduled to appear on the Dick Cavett Show on the Monday following Woodstock. With the traffic jam piling into Bethel, it was unclear whether she would have been able to make it in and out in time. And so she watched from a hotel room as musician after musician took the stage, singing the pain, rage, love, and joy of the time. One of these groups was Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. At the time, Mitchell was dating Graham Nash, and she had been gigging with the group in Chicago just a few days earlier. Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young took the stage in the early hours of the morning on Monday, August 18th. A few hours later, the crowds would disperse and return to normal, or abnormal, life. When Nash returned to Mitchell, he was still in bliss from the event. He told her how it truly felt like a moment of change in the world. As he recounted his story, Mitchell transcribed, writing his words down into her notebook. In the coming days, Mitchell would transform those words into a song, aptly named Woodstock. Mitchell's song is wide open and spacey, propelled by a simple electric piano. It's an impressionistic piece of music that seems to capture the slow hordes of people moving towards the festival. But the way Mitchell writes it and sings it, it could have just as easily been a traveler on a pilgrimage hundreds of years earlier. The historical feeling is aided by Mitchell's description of a hippie, a child of God. He was walking along the road. The hippie movement was pushing all kinds of different takes on religion, philosophy, and spirituality. Their peace-loving habits, loose clothes, and wild hair even seem to reflect images of ancient apostles. Later in that verse, though, Mitchell makes it clear she's talking about 1969 when she name-drops Yasgur's farm. Max Yasgur was a dairy farmer who owned the land that Woodstock took place on. On the festival's second day, Yasgur would speak to the audience. He told them that they were proving something to the world.
500,000 young people can get together and have 3 days of fun and music, and have nothing but fun and music, and I God bless you for it.
But it was more than just that. This was a personal journey for each and every one of those people. Joni Mitchell frames it as a journey to get back to the land, to shed the burdens of the modern world. I'm gonna try and get my soul free. In the second verse, Mitchell joins up with another pilgrim, and the journey becomes bigger. She starts to feel she's at a turning point in history, part of a machine, a massive organism, pushing towards change. And I feel to be a cog in something turning. And by the time we get to the third verse, Mitchell sings that this organism has grown to 500,000 people. And that number isn't that far off. Today's estimates put Woodstock's attendance at around 400,000 people. Those 400,000 were the culmination of a countercultural movement that had been growing in America for half a decade. One of the unifying aspects of this counterculture was opposition to the war in Vietnam. Mitchell depicts this opposition with a bout of magical realism, the power of love turning bombers into butterflies. But the most important message of Woodstock comes in the chorus, "We are stardust." Mitchell believes in a great interconnectedness of all things. At the end of the day, we are all, as Mitchell says, billion-year-old carbon. Or as Carl Sagan puts it,
the very matter that makes us up was generated long ago and far away in red giant stars.
We all yearn for a sense of connectedness, a sense of being something bigger than we are. And the truth of our cosmic origins give us this connectedness. We're all made of the same building blocks as the rest of the universe. Mitchell finds beauty in this scientific reality, and then smashes science headlong into a religious metaphor, caught in the devil's bargain. For Joni, we're all part of one being, all working together to find our place, and to make sense of an evil and chaotic world. We were all together once as star stuff, and Mitchell wants us to get back to that place, to a paradise of unity. In religious terms, Mitchell wants us to return to the Garden of Eden. Joni Mitchell found an ethereal beauty in Woodstock and distilled it into a perfect song. She would start performing that song almost immediately, and in April 1970 she released it on her album Ladies of the Canyon. But of course, Joni Mitchell's take on Woodstock isn't the only one. Mitchell gave her song to her friends who actually played Woodstock, and Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young released their version in March 1970 as the lead single to Deja Vu. Their interpretation of the song is quite different from Joni Mitchell's. Where her version was spaced out and tinged with melancholy, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young's was an upbeat party driven by vocal harmonies and Neil Young's guitar.
We are stars, we are golden.
This is Woodstock seen through two different lenses, the dream of Woodstock and the reality. Both are optimistic and both feel important, but Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young's is grounded, it's upbeat. Woodstock was, after all, a giant party. It was sex, drugs, and rock and roll played out loud and proud across a seemingly utopian weekend. Where Joni Mitchell's music personifies the lyric "We are stardust," Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young's version personifies everywhere there was song and celebration. Through these two songs, we get an intimate look at a pivotal moment in the American counterculture. We get to see an entire generation coming of age in the face of strange and confusing times, and we get to see the dream of facing these times with love and with unity. Of course, the dream of Woodstock never really came true, but that doesn't mean it wasn't an important moment. And I think that Joni Mitchell's words have preserved that dream for the generations since. To this day, they still provide hope of a better way, hope of a kind of unity, and hope that one day we might be able to get back to the garden. If you want to see the dream of Woodstock playing out 50 years later, you need look no further than the Woodstock bus. In 1969, a man named Dr. Bob covered a VW bus with symbolic paintings, believing it would help usher in a new age. And now, 50 years later, on the anniversary of Woodstock, a man named John Wesley Chisholm is trying to find and restore that original bus. If you want to see the full story, you should check out The Woodstock Bus, a new documentary that premiered this week on CuriosityStream. That documentary follows Chisholm's journey to find his bus, and in doing so, find the spirit of Woodstock. And there's plenty more where that came from. With over 2,400 documentary titles on all kinds of topics, CuriosityStream is the first subscription streaming service dedicated to documentary content. If you go to curiositystream.com/polyphonic and enter the code polyphonic, you can get 30 days for free and check out the Woodstock bus. After that, membership is just $2.99 a month, and that gives you access to all kinds of documentaries. Another one I'd recommend is The Butterfly Effect, which looks at the small moments that lead to giant shifts, like when Elvis Presley paid $4 to record a pair of songs for his mother, and in doing so changed the course of music history. So if you want to check it out, make sure to go to curiositystream.com/polyphonic and use the coupon code Polyphonic. That way you'll get 30 days free, and you'll be doing me a big favor by showing CuriosityStream that you support my channel.